I really hate for this to be a talking head video. However, when I was over training with Master Yun, this was 1985. The internet wasn't even around. So we had no way of videotaping or anything. And we took some pictures. Many of the pictures that I did have, my personal pictures, were destroyed in a flood in a storage area where my stuff was stored while I was in Germany. So I lost a lot of those photos. The only photos I really have are from our black belt tests and a couple others of training. But in this section, I want to talk about Master Yun as a teacher and as a martial artist and as a friend. Master Yun really he was kind of like a father figure. I was 19 and away from home. And aside from my father, this man had the biggest impact on my life. I still study today. Martial arts has always been a part of my life. It's affected so many areas of my life, from my job, to my relationships, to being a father, everything. Master Yun, when I was there, I started out in January of '86, or '85, as I said in the last video, part one. I trained, and by May of 1985, I was his only student. Probably even April of '85, because the other two guys that I was training with that were there when I first started, they quit. So for a period of time, I was his only student. I would go to class and it would be just me and Master Yun and his daughter, Miss Lee, who was like an assistant instructor. She lived with him. I believe it was just another family member. I don't believe it was his actual daughter. And we would just train one-on-one for a period until other people came in. We had a lot of one-on-one time, and when I trained with Master Yun, he was very, very detail-oriented. We would do the forms, and he would correct me. He would always be correcting little things, the tiniest thing. When we would do, I would do my hyungs, I would practice my hyungs, and a lot of times he would just stand and watch, and all I would hear is again, and I would do it again, and it'd be again. And then if I kept doing something wrong, he would come out, explain it, correct it, and then it was again, until he said good, and I had it right. Many times, hopefully I wasn't too bad, and kept doing it over and over again. But he made sure that we knew what we were doing before we moved on to the next thing. We never asked him, when is my next belt test? When am I testing for blue belt? When am I testing for this belt? We never did that. It wasn't about that with him, and it wasn't about testing. It was about the skill and making sure that you had it down and had it right. The belt system for Master Yun's class was white, blue, red, black, period. That's it. Which wasn't a bit, there were no testing fees except for black belt. We paid, I think it was $150 for my black belt test. The black belt test also included a full uniform with the midnight blue trim, Tang Soo Do on the back, the certificate, and the black belt Muda-kwan pin, which I still have today. People that trained in the Muda-kwan receive a Muda-kwan emblem pin, and it's proof that you are a Dan black belt in the Muda-kwan. And I received that, so did three of my other fellow brothers in Tang Soo Do during our black belt test. But Master Yun, the embodied spirit of the Muda-kwan, which was the school of martial virtue, and he made it a lifestyle. Many times when I would come on my own, I would practice in the dojang, and I would open the doors, go in and train, and I'd be working out, and if he heard me training, he would come in, slide the window open to see who was in there, open the door, and sometimes he would come in and just say hey and go about his way if he was busy. Other times he would come in and we would train together, and I would get some private lessons from him one-on-one. Again, perfecting my katas and forms. And then afterwards, I ended up helping teach his daughter English. If I was working out on a weekend and it was like a Saturday afternoon or something, I would come in, train. And when I was done, he would invite me over to eat lunch with his family. He had a son. There was Miss Lee. There was also another female he considered his daughter. I cannot remember her last name. She was also an assistant instructor when I first started. And I got to spend time with him. We discussed martial arts. We discussed my family in Buffalo, and I got to know his wife and his kids a little bit. And while I was there too, people from the village would come, and he was kind of like a doctor. He wasn't like a doctor in the sense of prescribing medication or doing Master Yun was a bone setter, and when people in the village injured themselves or broke a bone or anything or dislocated something, they would come to him and he would reset it and take care of them. And a lot of people knew him as a healer in the village. He wasn't like a doctor as far as doing stitches or surgeries or anything like that, but he would do manipulations, bone setting, joint manipulations to fix and heal people. So he was also a healer, which is big in the martial arts as well. Master Yun and Miss Lee were pivotal in my learning. Miss Lee, when Master Yun wasn't there, I was always under the watchful eye of Miss Lee, who was actually kind of harsh compared to Master Yun. Master Yun would be like, he would correct you and all, but he wouldn't be like kind of harsh or smack you or anything. Miss Lee was a little bit harsh. But cool anyway. Both of them he had trained her as well to a very high degree. Her Tang Soo Do was very good as well. But Master Yun was in the village, he was well respected. I never saw him at the bars, never actually saw him at any of the facilities other than the store. Never saw him at the bars, never saw him in the downtown to get food or anything like that. He pretty much just stayed in his home, trained, and went about his Tang Soo Do business. He was kind of also like a mayor sort of the town. He was one of the top level people in the village that people went to for advice, and he was highly regarded. When people found out that you were a student, they kind of, they had that kind of respect for you as well. But on the other hand, if you were a screw up, if they knew you were a student and you were out there in the village being a jerk or screwing up or showing your ass, he would find out about it because people would tell him and you would be in trouble. Master Yun was very respected in the community. During our black belt test, I have many photos of my black belt test. That's where most of my photos are still from. They weren't in that part that was flooded out. The black belt test was almost a day-long thing. It was hours long. There were 4 of us testing. He had some senior Tang Soo Do instructors from Daejeon and the surrounding area come as witnesses to watch and observe and also grade us as well. Also, Master Yun, by doing so, he was kind of showing us off to the other instructors. So we also had, not only were we trying for our black belt test, we had the pressure of passing our test, we also had the pressure of representing Master Yun to the other instructors in the area that were there. We couldn't go in there as our black belt test and look like we had no clue what we were doing or were sloppy. So that even added to that. Me personally, when the black belt test came up, I was on quarters. And for those of you who are not knowledgeable on the military ways, being on quarters, I was diagnosed with strep throat and I was on quarters. I was not allowed to leave my room. If I left my room, I could get in trouble, actually getting disciplinary action against me. I was on quarters for 3 days. The black belt test was on my 2nd day. So I took this black belt test, which I've been training for the whole time I was there and putting in all these hours for. I was not going to miss it. So I snuck off, went to the black belt test, took it feeling totally like crap. And in the middle of the black belt test, the base commander came in to watch, and he also knew I was there. Somebody had told him. So he shows up, and after I had finished doing my forms, I kind of I went into the back to rest while somebody else went, and I turned around and Lieutenant Colonel Martinez was there, the base commander. And he looked at me and he goes, "You're supposed to be on quarters, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yes, sir." And I thought I was done. My heart sank. I thought I was going to get yanked out of there and taken out. All he did is smile and say good luck. And we continued with the test. So the test was really tough. We went through everything. We went through the forms. We went through the basics. We went through a lot of sparring. I really think Master Yun really loved watching us beat the crap out of each other. We did a lot of sparring, and then we had to break a brick. I don't know where they got this brick, but the first guy went, smacked it a couple of times, didn't break. So my friend Louis, who is a master in Tang Soo Do, still teaching today, he went, brick didn't break. I had gone up, I smacked it 3 times to the point that my hand was hurting. And Master Yun had checked my hand. He wanted me to try again, and I told him I couldn't. And he checked my hand, and he told, felt it and all. He said no. So then the last guy went up, Paul Menas. After 3 of us had already wailed on this brick, never broke. Paul Menas goes up there, and on his, I think it was his 2nd or 3rd shot, it finally broke. But I don't know where they got this brick from, but it was solid. It was not breaking for us. 2 days later, my whole hand from my 3rd finger, this whole half of my hand right here was black and blue. Master Yun checked it, had some like Ditta Jiao liniment that rubbed on it, and it healed okay. But that day, it got beat. The brick won that day. So we all ended up passing our black belt tests, and it was a proud moment for Master Yun because we represented him well. And it was a proud moment for us because not only did we reach black belt, but we also knew that we did him proud. And that to me was just as important. Master Yun also was kind of funny because part of the test too was they had this stretching apparatus where it was just a cable with a little ankle thing you put around your ankle, and then you could hoist your leg up to stretch out. Well, in some of the pictures you'll see, we had to jump and do a flying side kick. Miss Lee would drop this thing to a certain level, and we had to do a flying side kick and hit it. You'd see some of the pictures of us like in our arms all over the place trying to freaking kick this thing. We did kick it, but there was one thing that reminded me of was there was one time I was training on my own, and it was Master Yun, Miss Lee, and myself. And I was in there doing my lessons. I was doing the forms, and he called me over, and it was right below where where that ankle thing hung. And Master Yun drew a circle about this little bit bigger than a basketball around my foot on the floor. And had me stand in the middle of the circle on one leg in a Tang Soo Do pose on one leg, and I had to hop off the leg I was standing on, do a jump front kick, and land on my other leg in this position. So I would be here, jump up, kick, and then land on my one foot and stay in the circle. Master Yun's instruction to me was, in the circle, you're good. Outside the circle, you die. And I was like, what the hell? And he had one of those bamboo shinais, and every time I ended up falling out of the circle, whack, I got whacked on the leg. He would laugh, but it didn't hit me really hard, but he had a sense of humor in his training as well. So we would do that, and he just had a way about him. And I don't want to ramble in this video, but I really want to make sure that Master Yun's legacy lives on. And when my last training, we were done sparring and everything, he asked me to stay. He wanted me to stay, and I tried to stay. The military had other plans, but I tried to stay. And he had told me that he had already taught us all the forms up to Basai. He had the Kicho forms, the 5 Pion forms, Naihanchi Chodan, Naihanchi Idan, which is the horse represented by the horse, Basai, which is the cobra, the snake, Jinto, which is the crane, Sipsu, which is the bear. And he told me that he wanted me to stay because he still wanted me to learn the tiger and the eagle, which was Kong San Kun and Osipsobo, which I found that out later. But he wanted me to learn those 2 forms. But those were the only forms in his system. It didn't include all of the forms that Huang Qi came up with later, the 7-star forms and all the stuff that he came up with as he transformed into Subak Do. The Tang Soo Do that Master Yun taught stopped with Osip Sobo and Kong Sang Kun. Those were the two most senior, highest level forms that he trained in. And I asked him if those were all the forms, and he told me that it was yes. So Master Yun wasn't about learning a bunch of forms just to know forms. He was about learning them correctly before moving on to the next one. He could have, if he wanted to, knowing that we were there for a certain period of time before we got transferred, just taught us really quick, taught us the forms just so we knew them and could repeat them and regurgitate them, but not with the proper form or the proper application of them. He didn't really go deep into the bunkai or the applications of the forms like that, what the meaning of the form was, but he did make sure before we left, before we advanced to the next belt level, that we were technically proficient in each and every form. So when I left Korea and said goodbye to Master Yun, I returned to the States and I began teaching students privately and helping other classes work. In different bases I went, I helped teach the classes. Once I got out, I taught students privately as a civilian. And I've always passed on Master Yun's teachings and made sure that his spirit lived on in everything I did. Even today, that's my whole purpose for this channel. That's my purpose for these videos. I wish I had video of Master Yun and the training and all that, or more photos, but I don't. And I don't want to be a talking head video this whole time, but I did just want to take this time in these two videos to pass on and try to put across how important Master Yun was in the development of Tang Soo Do in so many of us, the service members that learned while we were in Korea and had the benefit of learning under him and brought the art home and passed it on to those people here in the States and elsewhere. Again, there'll be more stuff referring to Master Yun in future articles and stuff like that, but this will wrap up my Remembering Master Yun video. I made a promise to him when I left that I would pass on everything that I was taught by him, and I continue to try to fulfill that promise to this day. I still do not feel like I have, and by doing this online and doing these videos, I hope to spread his teachings and the spirit of the Tang Soo Do that he taught to anybody interested in learning, both here in the States, worldwide, everywhere. Because it is for everybody. It's not just for kids, it's not just for the fit and the healthy, it's for everybody. And as Master Yun demonstrated through his actions and through his life, Tang Soo Do is a lifestyle. It's not just a martial art. And Tang Soo Do, from other schools that I've seen, it's one of those arts that even though it's very splintered, and there's a lot of organizations governing Tang Soo Do everywhere I've seen is a lifestyle. It's taught as a lifestyle, and it benefits the students that learn in huge ways in their personal life. So I encourage you, if you enjoyed these videos, give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your instructors did. You know, tell me about your instructors, and especially if you were a student of Master Yun, or your instructor was a student of Master Yun, or he's somewhere in your line, please comment below. Because the more of us students that can connect, the more we can keep his spirit alive. So please comment below, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. There's much more coming out with Tang Soo Do videos that I'll be doing to pass on everything I've learned. And when you subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell next to the subscribe button over here so that you get notified every time a new video posts. Be sure to share. Sharing's caring. And we will see you in the next video. God bless.